This program is brought to you in part by Cedar Ridge Paving and Milling, commercial and residential work. Yes, welcome to Race in Action Today. We're here today with very special guests to continue our show from part one. Now we're going to do part two of the Historical Society in Berlin that plays a major role in maintaining the history of what went on in the day. And I have to say, Lorraine, there's just so many things to talk about with when it comes to the history of Berlin that I never knew. And I want you to explain to us here, what does your organization do? And there's a misconception of what they do. That I do know. I've heard different tales about, well, they're going to control how do I fix my house, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
All right. I think people are confused because there are several organizations in Berlin that are involved with history. There's Berlin Historical Society, which runs the museum on Main Street, and we have a museum at the Berlin Fairgrounds. There's also the Historic District Commission, which is a town-appointed commission. I actually serve on that as well. And I don't know if the confusion is just because I'm in both and people see me.
Now, what does this commission do? What do you do?
The commission, back in 1974, there was an ordinance passed to create a local historic district, which is comprised mostly of Worthington Ridge area, from Mill Street to south to the Berlin Turnpike. And there's a commission of 8 people, 5 regular members and 3 alternates. And if anybody wants to do anything to their house that isn't like for like, which means they're adding or subtracting something that's already there, or they're changing materials or something like that, they have to go apply for a certificate of appropriateness through the Historic District Commission. And we meet once a month and review applications. But to dispel this, like, there's a lot of false information. We do not regulate paint color at all. And if you're re-roofing, you have asphalt shingles, you're doing asphalt, you don't need a permit for that. Mostly the things we get involved in, if you're replacing windows or siding, something like that, adding or subtracting a porch, things like that.
Now, could you use a synthetic siding or no?
It kind of depends, like, on the age of the house. Like the very old historic houses, we want to maintain them as wood.
Okay.
But that is like a whole separate thing. Berlin Historical Society is a non-profit, independent organization, and the Historic District Commission is a town overseeing commission.
Okay, all right. I never knew that they even existed. That's the first time I heard that.
Oh.
That commission.
Well, we get a lot of calls at the museum saying, I want to change my windows, like, what do I do? And I said, well, you have to call the town about that.
Now, are you get appointed to be on that commission?
The town council appoints you to the commission, and you have a 5-year term when you're on it.
Okay.
And then there's a third organization that causes a little confusion because of the Worthington Meeting House project, where we're trying to complete its restoration and adaptive reuse as a museum and community cultural center. And that is, the advocate for that is Friends of Worthington Meeting House, which is another nonprofit. And there's a lot of confusion because most of the members of that group are also members of Berlin Historical Society.
Okay.
But
now, why was that formed, though? What was the reasoning for forming that?
That was formed because originally the town manager back in the early 2000s, Bonnie Therian, I don't know if you remember her.
Yes, I do.
She was very into doing something with the building to preserve it. And she asked for volunteers for a committee that would kind of brainstorm ideas and hold public hearings to kind of get input on what it could become. So after we secured some funding from the town to do some major work on the building, the town council disbanded our committee, and we said, well, what do we do now to bring this forward? And they said, the best thing you can do is form a nonprofit and be able to collect funds, because I don't think you can give money to the town and it's tax exempt, but you can give to a nonprofit.
Now, do you find like people in their will leave the historical people
we have
some
some
money?
people that I know they intend on doing that, and we have we've received memorial gifts. Some people are still making memorial gifts in honor of their parents.
Okay.
So we,
Yeah, I often wondered how did they get their money? You know, I mean, to restore that building, it's going to take a ton of money.
yeah. Well, the work that was done so far was done partly by a state grant and partly by town bonding,
Okay.
which has been more than paid off
Yeah,
a long time ago.
Yeah. Now, the other thing, Lorraine, that we haven't really talked too much is different special houses that are on Worthington Ridge that are historic sites. We have some pictures of different ones. It'd be tough to kind of pinpoint, but I'd like people to see them. And what could you tell me about some of these houses?
Oh, well, the historic district is a little over a mile long, and it's interesting because it's a mix of houses. There's early 18th century colonial houses. There's mid-19th century Victorian houses, arts and crafts. There's a range of architecture there to deal with. And plus, there's a smattering of newer houses in there.
Yeah.
So as far as historic buildings, the Historical Society has had walking tours, and we do at the museum, we have a walking tour guide pamphlet booklet that they can purchase. It's only a few dollars, and do a self-guided tour. But we're hoping to do another walking tour this year or next. The U.S. 250th anniversary will be next year, so we're looking for big events to do. So we have a range. The Meeting House is probably the most important building on there, but we also have buildings that were taverns or hotels. The house, like on the corner of Wildham near the monument, that was the Berlin Hotel. Near Hudson Street, there was the Loveland Tavern. And then on the corner of Sunset, there was the Fuller Tavern. And the Fuller Tavern is actually documented in George Washington's diary.
Oh, wow.
In November 1789, he had already been president, and he took a trip through New England to visit people who had served in the war with him. And plus he wanted to take a read of what the citizens thought about the new government. So he stopped along the way. He did not sleep at the Fuller Tavern. He went there for breakfast.
Oh, wow.
And there was like a gathering of people early in the morning to wait for him.
Now, when you're saying on the corner, is that Dr. Zacchio's old house?
The Wilsons lived in there. Do you remember them? It's
Then the mansion is across the street there. What do you call it, Judd?
Oh, that's
right. That's the Judd Mansion, right?
Yeah, it was originally Charles Jarvis's home. It was based on an actual home that's in England somewhere that it was in a magazine.
Oh, wow.
And Jarvis was head of Berlin Iron Bridge. They made very famous curved, it's called lenticular truss bridges. They're all over the country. That company had a long history, and it actually has evolved into Berlin Steel Construction now. But Charles Jarvis, he owned a lot of farmland, particularly where I grew up, like on the southern end of Worthington Ridge, way back all the way to Spruce Brook Road.
Yeah.
Near the firehouse, there's a road called Jarvis Lane.
Yes, there is. Yes, there
That's
is.
named for him, but he grew alfalfa.
Oh, wow.
You know, a lot of these wealthy people like also had gentleman farms
Yes.
and a
yes.
lot of property. So I call it the Jarvis Mansion, but then a Judd owned it, then a Jones, and now Bill Travers owns it.
Yeah, beautiful area. I mean, I can remember walking up there used to be a steeple there. I don't know,
There was a
it was gone now,
there was
right?
a tower burned down,
Yes, yeah.
and they had a long carriage house barn, and it
Yes.
had a bowling alley in it.
Bowling, oh yeah. I could, when I was a kid, I could remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, very historic there.
I was going to say one reason the historic district was formed was probably back in, I think it was in the 60s. The Wilcoxes had a colossal mansion on Worthington Ridge. It was set back. I don't know if you remember that, but very Victorian and everything. And then, because I can remember being away for one summer and coming back, and it was taken down completely.
Oh, wow.
And they wound up building a ranch house. And I think people were so shocked, they just realized we better like do something to protect these old houses.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And since then, like the property's been subdivided, and there's newer kind of historic flavored houses in the front.
Yeah, the street is very interesting, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, the Berlin Congregational is there. They were built in 1850.
yeah, the new one, the
newer one.
white church. We have a picture of that.
Yeah, but they came from the Worthington Meeting House.
Yep.
And when the Worthington Meeting House became too plain for them, and people were wealthier, and it was a bigger congregation, they wanted to build a more modern church, which was kind of in the Gothic style back then.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful church.
It is. It's beautiful. You know, a lot of the houses have interesting histories about who lived there. The house that Art Powers lives in.
Yes, yeah.
Blakesley Barnes was a tinsmith in town who became quite wealthy. That was his house. And actually, when you ask what we do at the museum, we get so many visitors from near and far doing genealogy research, and we had the Blakesley Barnes descendant family come from all over the country to the museum to go to the different sites and see where their ancestors lived.
Wow.
So,
Well, there was a house too that Mackenzie. He was superintendent of schools back long time ago.
Yeah, that house
There's the
is
little
still there.
house there, right? That's got to be an old house, right?
yeah, that was a house. There was Daniel Dunbar was a lawyer that lived in it way back.
Yeah,
originally.
Then the brick, big. What's that? Prentice?
George Prentice, who started Prentice Manufacturing.
Yeah.
Which manufactured zippers and fasteners, and they're on the factory building is now condominiums on New Britain Road.
New Britain Road.
But he built that, and that house, the property went all the way back to what they call the ledges that are beyond the turnpike. And he had Gentleman's Farm also, and he sold milk under the Ledges Dairy label.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I never knew that. That's different. Now, I got to ask you, Worthington Ridge, I mean, in the very early days, the road to go to New Haven or whatever, there was no Berlin Turnpike. Right?
It was the Hartford New Haven path.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
So you had stagecoaches coming by.
Yes.
Everything. And in the, I think it was beginning in the 30s and 40s, they built the Berlin Turnpike, and that really diverted all that traffic there.
Yes.
And Worthington Ridge became quieter, though now it's kind of used as a cut across, and people that live there complain about the traffic and the speeders.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because it's really a very walkable road. There's sidewalks, and it's nice to see the the houses up close.
It is. I have to say, it's very pretty, the street itself. And, you know, growing up in town, I love that area. I really do.
Yeah.
You know. And I hope they preserve it forever, you know.
But getting back, you asked me other things we do. And at the museum, of course, we're open on Saturdays, but we do a lot of research for people. We have school tours, like beginning in April, we have all the second graders come. It involves like 6 days of tours. And they go through, and there's a tour, then there's an area where they try to figure out how to use an old telephone, things like that. And then we have Sally Caliandra, our president, talks downstairs about what it was like going to school in the old days.
Oh, yeah.
And Mark Duplin, one of our members, talks about punishments.
Oh, wow.
You know, they did things that you'd never get away with now.
I can remember when I was going to school at Worthington in 4th grade, we made candles in the school. We made them out of boiling fat or whatever they use.
Nice, and use the mold.
Yes, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, I can remember doing that. That was special to a kid.
Yeah.
You know, how do you make a candle? You know what I mean?
Yeah. But you know, we do a lot of things at the museum. Like we're always reuniting people. Like we've had interesting things where people find a box of letters in their attic, and they'll call up and say, "Do you know anybody in this family?" And because I've lived in Berlin most of my life, like I know somebody.
Yeah.
And then we reunited them, and there's all interesting stories that come of that. We also have a lot of exhibits about other industries in town, like the pistol manufacturing on the North Mill.
Pistol Creek.
Where they call it Pistol Creek now. The bridges, and the tinware is like super big too, because that was the first big industry that started here when the Patterson's brothers came here in 1740.
See, I remember going to school with somebody, and his father did tin work across the street from Worthington School. It was like across the street. There's a factory there now. I thought this was on the left side of that factory.
Oh, I think I know.
He did.
Yeah, there was a feeling because they gave us 2 like big lanterns that we were going to use at some point.
He made lanterns and stuff like that. Yeah.
But the tin industry was really where the whole Yankee peddler concept started, because once everybody here was making tin, buying tin from each other, they had to expand their markets. So they hired young men to travel farther away in carts to sell it. And it was a big deal if you're a young person, and normally you didn't get to travel anywhere outside of your town. Yeah. So they got to travel all the way down south and whatnot. And that whole thing about the Yankee peddler became our town symbol. Oh. Because, you know, it's when we first started industry here and became known in the rest of the country.
Well, yeah, we, you know, in the beginning, to me, it didn't seem like a lot of industry because there was more cows than I used to say.
It was a very rural town.
Yeah, there was more like a farm country, you know what I mean?
And considering like it's in the center of the state, there's areas that still have that feel because the town has done a lot to preserve old farmland as open space.
Yes, yes.
So it's not completely gone, though. It's rare that you see a cow.
No, I mean, back then, that's all you saw were cows and, you know. I mean, we used to go fishing when I was a kid on Lower Lane. I mean, it was beautiful, I'll tell you. It still is, actually. Yeah. You know? Of course, the cows are all gone, and barn is still there, though. Yeah. You know? I think the milk building is still there, where they made the milk. You know, bottled it and everything.
Yeah. On Lower Lane, are you talking
Lower
about
Lane,
the
yes.
Ventress or the Lower Lane Dairy?
No, Lower Lane Dairy.
Yeah. I go by that and I see the barns are still there.
They're still there.
Yep.
Yeah. Ventures was kind of interesting. They turned that into a house. And at the time when we were kids, we used to go there, and everything was on an honor basis. If you got milk or juice, you were supposed to leave the money in the tin. You know? Oh, my dear.
Well, you still see that around town.
Yeah,
There's honor stands.
Yeah, yep.
There's a lady on my street that sells pussy willows, and she's got an honor box.
Well, you know, when I was growing up, when you played Little League baseball, there were, you know, regular teams. But then when you went to what they call Babe Ruth from 12 years old on, they were sponsored teams by local companies and farms. There was Hamilton Construction had a team, Ferndale Dairy had a team, Ventures had a team. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They were very active with people. And, you know, I'd like to see things sometime go back to where it was, you know.
Well, sports are still big in town.
Oh, they are. They're huge.
Yeah.
They're huge, you know. And so I just can't believe you're involved with 3 different groups.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of fell into this because I grew up in Berlin, and then after college I lived in New Britain for 10 years, and then I didn't think I'd move back to Berlin, but then we found a house we liked, and we moved back there, and I just kind of started discovering the history.
Yeah.
And there was so much I didn't know. Like, I was like a sponge, like, just absorbing it all. So
Now, at one point, Sally had an antique house too, right? Didn't she?
yes, and her
Caliandre, Castelli
Caliandre, her mother was Hilda Codlin. She was a teacher. Actually, she taught my mother.
Oh, wow.
You know, so the house is on Kensington Road, on the far off part of Kensington Road, but her son lives there now.
Big house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because the part she does when we have the kid tours, she's put together a book with pictures of her mom as a little girl feeding the chickens and the cow and everything, and going to school. And she reads that to them. And
oh, wow.
You know.
I know it was a very pretty house. I always liked it from the road looking at it, you know. I was never in it, though. But I like it. Like I said, I like colonial architecture. You know, it's special to me.
Well, I think that's like what people come here to New England to see.
Yes, right. New England is history.
People want to see old houses and history, and you know.
And so you have an event coming up. I guess
Saturday.
a tag sale, right?
We have an indoor tag sale at the museum this Saturday, 9 to 3.
Yeah.
It's mostly small things, but we have a really good
Now,
selection.
in the summer, you do a lot more, or no?
We do another tag sale. The date hasn't been set yet, but it'll be later May, June. And that we've been holding up behind the meeting house at our little house we own there. So we'll be announcing that soon.
Do you ever have, like, bring in a painter or something, and have it like exhibitors, you know, teaching people different things about, you know, the colonial stuff?
We have had, we have a range of speakers. Usually they're authors of something to do with the local thing.
So you get into a few different things, huh?
Yeah.
It keeps you busy.
Keeps me busy.
How many members are there in the Historical Society?
We have 119 members.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't say all of them are super active.
Okay.
But we have a good core group of people, and we get along really well, and it's a lot of fun.
Somehow I'm going to have to get involved with this organization somehow.
Yeah, you should.
You know, I mean, I built a post and beam shed. It's got a metal roof, and I mean, I love that old architecture. You know, but yeah, we'll have to get together, get me a forum, and you know,
I will get that too.
and
You know, because you have, anybody who grew up in town, you have a wealth of information.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you think you don't know a lot, you really do.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly glad that my father had the foresight to buy a house in Berlin. That I'll tell you. I can't tell you how happy I am with that fact. And my family is here, and you know, I have 3 children, and it's really special. You know.
Yeah, we love Berlin too, and we do everything we can to promote it.
Yep. That's what it's all about, right?
Yep.
Well, Lorraine, when you're having fun,
Time goes
time
fast.
goes by. We're going to have to call it a day today. It's been fun talking about the history in Berlin. And I want to remind people that when you're going in Berlin, Worthington Ridge is the area you want to be looking at, because there's more historic houses there, I would say, than anywhere in town. I mean, they're all over the town, though. They are.
But there's a concentration there, and it's worth getting off the turnpike and parking someplace.
Yes, take a walk.
Walking.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I really want to thank you, Lorraine, for coming tonight.
You're welcome.
And I want to thank our viewers, too. And please return next week to Racing Action Today Talk Series. Thank you. This program is brought to you in part by Just Results Weight Loss Center in Berlin, Connecticut.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models, from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.